this is Sloof and I'm at the VMworld 2014. I'm at the bookstore again and I'm joined by two authors, Michael Webster and Michael Corey. How are you guys?
Fantastic, thank you.
Doing great.
Awesome. So you have launched a new book regarding virtualization of SQL Server. You're both authors of the book. Are there special tricks when you are virtualizing SQL Server?
The great thing about virtualization is it doesn't change the operating system and it doesn't change the database. So actually a lot of the same rules that you do physical apply directly to virtual. But there is a lot more in the stack to be aware of, and that's why we wrote the book, to explain the entire stack for SQL Server and all the decisions that you go into doing it right.
Right. So I can imagine it's depending on the type of workload that SQL Server is not low-hanging fruit for a lot of companies.
Right.
You still see a lot of companies running SQL Server on physical hardware. Is that also your experience?
Yeah, we see a huge movement towards virtualizing SQL Server for all the high availability features with it. And the misconception is that it can't perform, but the reality is, done correctly in a virtualized environment, it performs just as well. So the trick is just to know what to do.
So what are the main takeaways from your book? Does it go in depth with regarding design or troubleshooting?
Yeah, so we cover a lot of the design aspects, also troubleshooting aspects, planning aspects, baselining, the way that you'd put a project together to successfully virtualize a database. There's a lot of technical aspects, but there's also a lot of non-technical aspects that go into making a successful project. And we cover all of those in the book, and we also give the reasons why. So it's not just about the what you need to do, but why you need to do it and how you need to do it as well.
So what I run into sometimes is that a guy over at the database department is creating a real bad query, and in the early days it's always the network that was slow, but these days when you're hosting an SQL server on VMware is to blame. So it's not sized the right way, there's not enough memory in there. How do you cope with things like bad queries and avoiding that you are the one who made the mistake?
So a database is really just an extension of the storage. So if you write a bad query, it's going to have a direct impact on the storage. So the important thing is to try and identify those through the statistics that are available in the database and the hypervisor, and then go back and work with the DBAs to try and optimize those queries. But you know, we can do a lot of magic in virtualization. Fixing bad queries is not something that we can do in our kit bag, but we can help the database administrators identify those things.
Right. So talking about storage, these days there are a lot of storage solutions that can enhance the performance of your storage. Is it suited to SQL? Does SQL, for instance, can perform better when you're using a product like Pernix Data?
So the bottom line is anything you can do to make storage faster is going to help a database. As he says, an extension of your database. Storage is an extension of your database. The faster the storage, the faster the database.
Okay. So multiple CPUs. If you put like 8 or 10 CPUs on an SQL host, it doesn't have to be necessarily faster. How do you right-size an SQL server regarding the number of CPUs?
That's a very good question. So a lot of the times administrators will want to oversize the SQL database because they think it's going to make it go faster, and a lot of times it doesn't do that, depending on how they've laid it out. But SQL Server is one of the most performance-intensive workloads that you can virtualize, and it is multi-threaded. So if you've got lots and lots of queries going on, it can use all of those CPUs. I helped a customer virtualize their core banking system last year, and their database has 20 CPUs, and it uses them, especially during batch jobs and things like that. So it's a matter of looking at the utilization, baselining what the performance is now, knowing what the goal is of the system when it's virtualized, and then measuring against that consistently and in a way that's predictable and valid compared to the current system that's not virtualized yet.
And just one other thing, I think of it as the IT food groups, right?
Yes.
Your database needs enough disk, memory, CPU, and network. And if you give it what it needs, it will perform appropriately.
Okay. So going back to your point, if you have 4 CPUs and you have a peak load of 40%, then you should switch to 2 CPUs and have a peak load of 80% on both CPUs, and it performs better?
You could do, because of the way that the scheduler works inside of the hypervisor, and provided that the number of virtual CPUs aligns very carefully with the actual physical hardware, then you can actually get better performance out of virtualizing multiple databases on the same piece of hardware. But it's very important to understand what those peak workloads are and then plan for them. But it's definitely better to right size and have less, because you can always hot add more. And that's a completely non-disruptive operation. You can just hot add a CPU if you need it for a peak time.
Right. Okay, guys, many thanks for the interview. I think everybody should buy the book and follow your best practices. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, and we sold out at VMworld, so if you'd like to buy a copy of the book, go online to Pearson Education, and that's fantastic. Thank you very much for the interview.
And thank you for the interview very much.
You're welcome.